Thank you very much for the long introduction.
Sir,
Uh,
it is
Unfortunately,
really
I could not do a little more precise writing so that it could become little shorter. Precise writing is a very tough thing to do.
sir, you need to know that you have done a lot of work and you can take the credit for it. So I'm really honored to introduce you, sir.
Yeah, there is still a lot more left. Let me
Yes,
try. Thanks a
thank you,
lot
thank
for
you.
the kindness. We will start off. I think I've shared it. Is it visible now?
Yes, sir, it is visible now.
So wherever there is an audio visual problem, kindly intercept.
Will do,
Otherwise,
sir.
we can continue.
Yes,
Okay. Um,
thank,
very,
thank you
very
very
good
much.
morning to all of you. I see a very impressive audience, more than about 85 people there, spreading over different organizations. So very nice to interact. In all these events, I consider the networking as the most important outcome. Unfortunately, it is not a face-to-face interaction where we could exchange visiting cards and all. Nothing like meeting people face to face in 3D in real, but we have to manage with that. So, COVID has also done some good things to us. It has taught us how to make use of the media for communication, for lecturing. We have saved a lot of money through this. So, although the travel industry has suffered a lot of industries are now learning to do business without physical visits. So everything has a good aspect. That's called blessing in disguise. So unlike the traditional additive manufacturing lecture, I have today taken up a topic which is path planning challenges in additive manufacturing. Because I started my career way back in 1984. I joined Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. I started as a CNC programmer. So I have gone through right from manually inputting the G code, M code into the CNC machine, then having a paper tape reader. Many of you would not have seen paper tape reader. Paper used to have perforations, and then the optical system used to read it and then interpret it. So my growth in CNC is from that bottom level. Subsequently, CAM packages came, CAD CAM packages, but I have even done programming using APT, automatic programming tool. It is a language very similar to COBOL or Fortran, and we used to do programming using that. We used to define the geometric statements, motion statements, and post processing instructions. So it has been learning right from the bottom of the CNC technology, which many of you were lucky or unlucky to skip those basic steps. For example, many of you do not know or have not even seen how a dial phone works, although the word dialing is still in use. Otherwise, none of you have really used dial phones. You don't even have button phones. Nowadays you have all soft keys on the screen itself, on the touch screen itself. So I know the difficulties involved in the path planning activities on any motion systems. Therefore, I try to capture my experiences and then put it in this form. So, in terms of my experience, I was with Hindustan Aeronautics Limited for about 9.5 years. I was posted in Kanpur, where I made use of the presence of IIT Kanpur. I started my PhD. It was a PhD in part-time mode, and subsequent to that, I joined IIT Bombay as a faculty. So it was a great journey, which finally landed me in this teaching profession, which I really enjoy. Okay, so coming to the contents, I'll start with some preambles related to the topic and not really related to the topic. Then I'll talk about the positioning systems. Then the various path planning strategies I have put in 3 categories. The first one is common to all HED beams. By HED, I refer to high energy density beams. Typically, they are electron beam and lasers. Of course, there are also new HED beams coming up. Some people are even talking about microwave being focused as a sharp beam, which can be used for additive manufacturing. But as of now, lasers are dominating, and electron beam also is developing, but electron beam is yet to become popular. Okay, so we have path planning strategies which are generic in nature for both. Then path planning strategies specific to electron beam. Finally, path planning strategies specific to lasers. Finally, I'll conclude. So I'll start with preamble. So because of my association with HAL, or I got associated with HAL because of my passion for flying, and I never did any flying when I was in HAL. I was a manufacturing engineer. Even here, I was focusing on manufacturing till about probably 2005. I'm one of the earliest in the country to develop a drone and fly it. We took part in an event in 2006 in Agra organized by DRDO. Today, I have a drone which is large enough. I'll play the video, which is self-explanatory. What is more interesting in this is the entire thing is made out of stainless steel. You know, when it comes to flying, immediately you think of either aluminum or graphite FRP. Whereas, you know, we decided to go for stainless steel mainly because, you know, it's always money, which is always a problem. So we are short of money, so we try to, you know, do a combination of good design and a simple material, because you can get welding done easily in any of the simple shops. Whereas if you want aluminum or graphite fiber, manufacturing cost is very high. So that is why we went for it. But now we realize that this is also a good way to do. I'll run the video. Currently, it is flying in empty weight. This was on November 20. It's a very big one. The overall size is 4 by 4 meter footprint. We have made a particularly long landing gear in order to avoid toppling, because the first time we are doing it, it's really scary. This is me. I was later tied onto it because the blades are, you know, like Vishnu Chakra, they are very close. So I was tied on it, and then he tried to lift, but it was a bit too heavy. So since then, you know, we reduced the weight of it. So we will be flying. We have reduced by about 40 kilo weight. So I'm sure it will be able to fly very well. Okay, so that is one. And then in that case, they are all fabricated out of 10 by 10 square tube, 1 millimeter wall thickness, stainless steel 304. Now, using the same tube, we fabricated, I think you are able to see, we fabricated this. Now, you'll see that it is the same 10 by 10 square tube, but using laser cutting, we did a lot of hollowing. So we typically use SolidWorks to do the design, then use FE analysis, optimize it, and then obtain it. Now, this was first time flown yesterday. So we found that, you know, this is as light as the plastic drone that you will find. That's the interesting part. It's made out of stainless steel, but see, the strength is not just the material. It's a combination of the design, and material. So here, we all know that lattice design can be realized using 3D printing. So we used in a way a lattice design, but we use the traditional manufacturing. So this uses again say an 8 rotor, 4 pairs of coaxial rotor. So this is what I'm trying to promote. Now that's about the diversion. Now we will get back to the main topic. Some preambles related to the topic. I would like to first discuss with you the various projects we are doing. What you see on the left hand side, we call it as hybrid layered manufacturing. By hybrid, we basically initially talked about material addition and subtraction happening under one platform. So, hybrid layered manufacturing. Subsequently, we realized that we can also hybridize a few more things. For example, when we try to create a layer, the outside of the layer only needs to be more precise geometrically. Okay, so we used laser deposition in 5-axis mode to create the outer periphery of the boundary of the layer. And then we fill the inside with rasters using 3-axis in MIG, metal inert gas cladding. So this way we were able to combine different energy sources, laser and MIG. Then we also realized that when you have to make components like this, they have a lot of undercuts, but in metal, it is hard to find support structure. So we wanted to eliminate the need for support structure. So we decided to use 5-axis. After all, the need for support is because of gravity. So if we can tilt the substrate such that there is no effect of gravity, then you can eliminate the support structure. So this particular piece that you see here, it was built by tilting the substrate appropriately. So the growth is still horizontal layers, but while you try to deposit the edges, it is appropriately tilted using the Trunnion table. What you see on the figure, I'm highlighting. I hope the arrow is visible. This is the Trunnion table, which can have A and C axis. So by 2 rotations and related XYZ translations, we were able to deposit pieces like that. So this is one of our significant contributions. So this is one way of doing 5-axis cladding. Another way of doing 5-axis cladding, which I have not shown in this figure, is that now you look at this particular impeller. If you forget the blade, it is a simple geometry converging upward. That means it does not require any support structure. So we built that hub or the inner geometry using a 3-axis cladding system in the usual way of additive manufacturing. Then we use the welding gun to put the beads in 5-axis. So here, by going for higher number of axes, the kinematics gets complicated, and we also go for different slicing concept. Here we call it as conformal slicing. Our traditional slicing is, stacking the layers in planar horizontal layers. Whereas here we are talking about putting the bead using a 5-axis motion of the gun. So it is no longer planar growth. It's very similar to the biological systems or the way a baby will grow in the womb of the mother. Okay, it grows in a conformal way, not in a horizontal layer. So that is what we were able to achieve in this. So as you can see in this, we call it as MSMA, multi-station, multi-axis hybrid layered manufacturing system, where we try to combine different levels of hybridization, material addition and subtraction, different energy systems, different slicing concepts. When you talk about different slicing concepts, then you have to also increase the number of degrees of freedom. So we are able to deposit in 5 degrees of freedom. So as a culmination of it, we have spent a lot of money. More than 16 crore rupees have been spent on in this particular project over the last 22, 23 years. Today it has culminated in this particular form. This machine is under fabrication in Bangalore, ACE Manufacturing Systems. The motion system alone is costing about 1.4 crore, and all the subsystem, for example, you see the laser here, which we already have, it is about 2.51 crore. So the entire system will cost about 6 crore, but then it can do a lot of things. You see a beam, this particular beam, madam, is my arrow visible?
Sir, it is visible, but if you could use the laser pointer, I think
Okay,
it
that's a
will
good
be.
idea. Yeah. Okay.
It shows red. You can choose the color too, sir.
Yeah. Is it better now?
Yes, we could see the
Okay. So
cursor.
this, you see a beam here. The beam can go up and down. That is our z-axis, and this entire carriage can move in this direction, which is our x-axis. And there could be a movement of the trunnion table in this direction, that is y-axis. Then the trunnion table itself has two rotary axes, which are A and C. So we have 5 degrees of freedom possible on this machine. And on this long beam, which can move in z-axis, we have several tool heads mounted on it. It's very generic in nature. We can adjust the spacing. We have tapped holes at regular grid, and each tool head has a pneumatic piston which can retract it or extend it. Only the required tool will be in extended condition. All other things will be in retracted condition. We can put 7 or 8 tools on it. You can have a face milling cutter on the main spindle. You can have a preheating system. We have developed an induction based preheating system that can be on the other side of it. And in the remaining area, we could have different cladding heads: MIG cladding head, TIG cladding head, laser cladding head. We can put a camera and inspect it. After the face milling, we can inspect the layer and see whether the layer has any defects. If it has defects, then we can face mill again and repeat it. Then we can also have a hammer on it. Using the hammer, we can apply compressive stresses on the surface by gentle hammering. That way you are able to release the residual stresses. Typically in additive manufacturing, when you build layers like this, the residual stresses are tensile in nature. That is why you see that this particular part, if you see at the bottom, you can see that it has curved upward like this. That's because of the residual stresses. So if we hammer after every layer, then the tensile residual stresses will be nullified so that such defects can be eliminated. So this is our flagship project running for the last 22 years or so: multi-station, multi-axis, hybrid layered manufacturing system. Then almost for the last 15 years, we have been working on a 3D printer for thermocol. What you see in white color, this is the thermocol pasted onto this table using a double-sided adhesive. And then we have, it may not be very clear, we have an automatic tool changer here, a hexagonal turret type of automatic tool changer driven by the pneumatic power, but recently we replaced it with an electric motor. Okay, so this can mill either here or here. So it's a combination of milling, adhesive bonding, and hot wire slicing. So using this, we have developed a 3D printer for foam, and you see the foam that was produced by this machine. And the purpose of it is primarily for foundry application. There is something called foam casting. So using this foam, you can convert it into casting. We are also in the process of setting up a foundry which will convert the patterns produced using this machine into a casting. That is another 5 crore project under Unchattar Avishkar Yojana. The period already 4 years are over. We are about to conclude the project. We also developed a sand 3D printer, which is nothing but SLS, selective laser sintering. Interestingly, there are only 2 SLS machines for sand 3D printing in the country. Coimbatore has one of them. Pune has another. Bajaj Auto Pune has one, and Coimbatore, it's a government tool room. I forgot the name. They have one more. So we have developed it based on the same line. So it's typically SLS 3D printer with our own changes. An important change is we use a laser which is hardly 45,000 rupees to 60,000 rupees. Almost 1 0 less compared to the traditional laser. Traditional lasers are high frequency or radio frequency lasers. So they will have very quick on off of the beam. So we use a glass tube laser. It has a very sluggish response for on off, but that doesn't matter to us because typically in 3D printing, after every contour, people switch off the beam and then go to the next contour. In our system, we don't switch off the beam. We switch on the beam at the beginning of the layer. We complete all the motions of that particular layer without switching off the laser. We found that it doesn't have any impact on the quality. And then finally we switch off. So it doesn't really matter if the switching on and off time is very high in our case. So this way we are able to develop a very, very cost-effective system. So we put the sand here, and the sand that we use here is nothing but the sand used in shell casting. So this is the casting produced out of this. When you go through sand 3D printing for mold making, typically our molds will be rectangular in nature. We'll have a cope, we'll have a drag. So both will be rectangular because the mold boxes will be rectangular in nature. But when you try to manufacture it without any of those boxes, we found that it is cheaper to produce a mold which is contoured, because I don't have to waste my time in sintering the sand in this area. Therefore, we are able to make a mold which is contoured in nature. So apart from saving money in mold making, it has the benefit of good heat transfer because wall thickness of the mold is uniform all around. So this is our sand 3D printing effort. Recently, we have developed a machine which will print ice. So water is used as a raw material, and we use multi-jet printing. It's not our original idea. Professor Ling Mu in USA developed it. He called this process as rapid freeze prototyping, if I'm right. Rapid freeze prototyping, RFP. He used FDM-like concept. He used a single nozzle. So he used essentially 2 nozzles as in FDM, fused deposition modeling. One nozzle was dispensing pure water, which froze at 0 degrees centigrade. Another nozzle was dispensing salt water or sugar water or some water with some impurities added. The moment an impurity is added, the solidification point comes down, the freezing point comes down. So the purpose is the impure water is used for model material, pure water is used for support material, and the whole building happens at sub-zero temperature, at something like minus 20 degrees centigrade. You dispense, create the layer, model and support, and raise the temperature to about -5. The salt part of it dissolves, and then you have a beautiful model available. So what is the use of it? So this is our recent achievement way back, I think in January, not in January, last month, in December, my student succeeded in building this and this out of ice. Okay, so this is able to, what we use a multi-jet printing. We use multi-jet printing used in regular printing process. So we took the help of a company in Indore. This machine is fully operational now. We did a lot of work related to the freezing mechanism. Initially, we thought of the traditional refrigeration system. Then we tried to augment it with carbon dioxide, solid ice. Then finally, we concluded that liquid nitrogen based cooling is better. He's still investigating on it. So what is the use of it? It can be used for, if it is Europe, then people will use it for probably making ice statues and, for the aesthetic applications. But we are focused on foundry. So this is the ice pattern produced using this kind of application. Then this is the plaster Paris mold produced from ice. Now you see that the features are very nicely reproduced on this. How it happens? See, the slurry, the ceramic slurry will be at plus degree centigrade. It may be 10 or 15 degrees centigrade or room temperature. Ice is at 0 degree centigrade. So when you put ice in a flask and fill it with the slurry, rather than transferring the geometry to the slurry, the ice will absorb the heat from the slurry and then start melting. So we really struggled how to solve this problem because we were adamant that we want to use ice for casting. Then, we went through the fundamental literature, found out that sublimation is possible. So we built a simple refrigerator and we applied a vacuum pump to that refrigerator, a combination of vacuuming with lowering the temperature enabled sublimation to happen. So when sublimation happens, then, before the ice melts, it vaporizes and then goes through the pores and then leaves. So we were able to produce a casting out of this. So this is a very interesting application. I have one PhD student working on the casting part of it and another working on the machine building part of it. About 2 years ago, we were successful in getting funding for electron beam additive manufacturing. This is for powder bed based electron beam additive manufacturing. So we will not go into the details of electron beam additive manufacturing. We have two projects. This is a 5 crore project with ACE Manufacturing Systems in Bangalore as our partner. And then we have one more project where we will use wire cladding, electron beam wire cladding as the method of producing the component. Here our partner is L&T. This is about 6 crore project. Totally about 11 crore funding is available for electron beam additive manufacturing. We are not importing any technology for electron beam. BARC in Mumbai has expertise in electron beam welding. So we have signed an agreement with them, got the technology of electron beam welding. Once we have welding, then welding and cladding are very close. So we are adding our own technology for beam management, and then we'll be able to build the machine. Quite challenging, but very interesting challenge. Okay, so this is briefly about the various projects we have been doing. So you'll find that our materials are not very complicated. We use simple material like sand, thermocol, ice. We have also taken up another project for paper-based additive manufacturing. This was traditionally called LOM, laminated object manufacturing. In fact, way back in 2002, I developed a software called OptiLOM. It became part of Magix 2.08 way back in 2002. It became part of that Magix software and launched in Euromold 2002. But there, LOM wasted a lot of paper. In our, not only paper is wasted, laser power also is wasted. So the life of the laser is limited. So a lot of laser energy was wasted. So what we are doing is nesting. On the same sheet of paper, we will cut the profile, paste it. And otherwise, raw material is exactly same, the reel of paper. But we have added 6 axes on this machine. You need z-axis for lowering every time, and the galvanometer which controls the laser uses x and y. So x, y, z are over. We need additional 3 axes. One is the movement of the paper reel, then the transverse movement of the paper reel, and a rotary degree of freedom. These 3 are additionally required in order to do the nesting of the profile. So this is going to be a 6-axis machine. We have started fabricating it, although we don't have any specific funding for this. We are able to manage funding from other sources. Okay, having said so much about the various projects that are going on in our lab, we will now get into the topic closer. Now, again, part of the preamble, let's have a few more slides. First is the various tools used in additive manufacturing. I can group them into 3 categories for the purpose of this lecture. One is a single nozzle or jet or beam. Okay, it's a sharp one. So examples are fuse deposition modeling. It could be an extrusion head. It could be a blade which is vibrating and cutting, as in Kira paper laminated manufacturing, or it could be a laser or electron beam. What are the typical characteristics of the single nozzle jet or beam? You need to address every point in the volume. That means you realize layer by layer as in any additive manufacturing, but then every point in that layer has to be addressed, maybe by line, and each line you address point by point. So the entire volume, that means the time is proportional to the volume of the object you build, plus of course, if there are support structures, you have to include those volumes too. So in terms of computer graphics or motion, we will call it as vector graphics, because you have a sharp tool, it has to move along different paths, unlike raster graphics. What you see on a TV screen, it is raster graphics. Okay, here it is vector graphics. Okay, the next thing is multi-jet or multi-beam system. In this, the examples are Z-Corp's multi-jet 3D printer and many more. In fact, even HP has launched one recently. Then the machine, what do you call that? Stratasys has a multi-jet machine. So all these fall under the multi-jet beam system. The graphics used is a raster type of graphics, and the time is proportional to the surface area of the object. In other words, it is 1 degree less. Here it is proportional to the length cube. Here it is proportional to the length square. There are also machines where you realize the layer in one flash. Okay, there the time is proportional to the height of the part only, because only the time for spreading the material is predominant. Otherwise, the curing is a constant time. It doesn't depend on the length of the movement. So the processes like solid ground curing, it's also known as photomasking, or there are tiny mirror displays which are used for it. People have also used a tiny array of LEDs. These are all known as the DLP. Okay, I think digital light processing. So all these require just an exposure. So the path planning is not all that challenging in these two processes. Whereas when we talk about the single nozzle jet or beam, path planning becomes quite complicated, because you realize the object in several layers, and each layer has several movements. And although you have miles of movement, the length is extremely high. It's not a single straight length. It is in several small pieces. Okay, it can be as small as 0.1 millimeter. Okay, so that poses a lot of challenge in terms of path planning and motion system. So our main focusing is going to be in the first part of it, in the rest of the slides. Okay, so a few more slides to emphasize the importance of laser and electron beam, or what I call as high energy density beams, HED beams. So there are several processes. In fact, the very first 3D printer developed was SLA that made use of laser. In fact, people developed the most complex 3D printer first, then they went for simpler and simpler systems. So SLA made use of a UV laser, about 100 watts. Sometimes it can be as low as 50 watt, because only polymer was used for curing. So monomer absorbed energy from the UV radiation, and then polymerization was activated. Selective laser sintering, the most popular. In terms of precision, SLA is still the leader. In terms of the production rate or productivity, yes, selective laser sintering is the leader, and it is both for metal and non-metal, metal, ceramic, non-metal, metal, ceramics, and polymer. For all three, it is useful. Depending on the material, the wavelength of the laser could be different. For non-metals, typically you go for CO2 laser, which may be about 10.6 micrometer wavelength, whereas for metal, you have to go for very narrow wavelength, something like 1 micron. Then laminated object manufacturing, in the early 90s, it was popular. That also used laser, but there the purpose of laser was only cutting. It was not polymerization or sintering, which are far more demanding. It was only cutting. Therefore, it used simple CO2 laser. Paper was the raw material, so 100-watt power was enough there. Then there is a process called laser engineered net shaping, LENS. This is popular for metals, and it's also very popular for functional gradient metallic objects, because it has 4 nozzles with a central laser. So by controlling the flow rate of the powder in the 4 nozzles, you can go for functionally gradient deposition. So LENS is very popular to that extent. That is known as DED or DMD, direct energy deposition or direct metal deposition. Like that, there are a lot of processes where laser is used for additive manufacturing as the tool. So here I have all the pictures of that. We'll go further. So these are some of our own processes where we use laser. One is HLM. I told you in the beginning itself, the outer profile we try to deposit using a laser cladding system in 5-axis motion. We have a 4 kilowatt fiber coupled diode laser from Laserline, and we are the only one in India to have a wire cladding system, to my knowledge, or maybe people might have procured recently. When we bought, we were the only one to have a wire cladding system, because laser always goes well with the powder as the stock as far as the cladding is concerned. Okay, we'll not get into the details why it is. Otherwise, if you have question answer session, I can clarify that. Okay, otherwise, typically people were using only powder form of raw material for laser, whereas we decided to go for wire because we wanted to use it in conjunction with metal inert gas welding, which uses always wire. So we didn't want to maintain 2 different inventories for the same part. Okay, so that is why we hunted around and we located it. We got it from Fraunhofer Institute in Dresden. It was called Quax Head. So this whole system is about 2.1 crore investment. Then we have a SAN 3D printer, as I explained in the beginning itself. It uses a glass tube CO2 laser. We initially used flying optics using a typical engraving system. We have 2 more versions coming up, Galvo based version, and then flying optics, but with a linear motor system. Then we are also working on a paper lamp system with 6 degrees of freedom, 6 axes, not degrees of freedom, 6 axes. Okay, so these are some of our own processes where we make use of laser. Now coming to electron beam in additive manufacturing, electron beam the most important advantage, when we talk to people connected with energy or, government agencies, we can say that energy efficiency is high because a laser is hardly 15 to 20% energy efficient. We are talking about energy drawn from the wall plug as electric energy. That is on the denominator, and put on the numerator the heat it actually creates. Okay, that is hardly 15 to 20%. Sometimes people claim 40%, 45% and all, but they are all under very ideal conditions. But average is never more than 15 or 20%. So in electron beam as well as MIG, the energy efficiency is extremely high. 85 to 90%, sometimes 95% energy efficiency is possible. Especially in electron beam, you don't lose energy in convection because the whole thing happens in vacuum. So you don't lose energy in convection loss. Therefore, it is even little more, marginally more efficient than MIG-based system. In fact, at some point, I would even consider MIG and electron beam same. In both, you give electricity. In both, you have some arc happening. That means the current flows without physical contact. Some kind of plasma happens between them. In one case, the gap is very high. In MIG case, the gap is as low as 10 millimeters, whereas in electron beam, the gap could be as much as 500 millimeters. Therefore, you need to have it in vacuum. MIG cannot happen in vacuum. MIG maintains a complete plasma between the two electrodes, whereas in the case of electron beam, the plasma is only at the region of the melt pool. Okay, so energy efficiency is extremely high in electron beam as well as MIG or any arc for that matter. Higher scanning speeds. Now, this higher scanning speed is the one that is attractive to me or for most people today. Now let's look at the various speeds possible. On a milling machine, the rapid speed can be as high as 40 meters per minute, and that is in G00. When you actually do the cutting, it will be hardly 2 meters per minute, because material like aluminum, when there's a physical interference involved with the material and the tool, so you cannot cut beyond 2 or 3 meters per minute, because of the physical interference. Of course, people keep on improving the material quality, the coatings on the cutting tools and all, but still there is a limit on it. Okay, so in a milling machine, your speed, let's say it's limited to 5 meters per minute. We are talking about meter per minute. When we come to laser, there is no contact between the laser and the workpiece. Therefore, the motion system only limits the speed. When you make use of galvanometer for deflecting the laser, a galvanometer can reach a speed of 10 meters per second at economical price of the laser. People have already claimed that the laser can be scanned at, did I say 10 meters per minute? I'm sorry, it is 10 meters per second. Okay, 10 meters per second is possible. Vis-a-vis 5 meters per minute we discussed for milling tool. Okay, so you can imagine something like 120 times between milling and laser. Okay, so 10 meters per second. But sometimes the process also starts limiting. Okay, one is the motion system. Galvanometer is a motion system. So the motion system is able to deflect the beam at a speed of something like 10 meters per second, and the acceleration possible is 50,000 meters per second square. We'll talk in terms of G henceforth. 1 G, we will approximately take it as 10 meters per second square. So a galvanometer can have a G of 5,000 to 7,000. Okay, so phenomenal acceleration and phenomenal speed, 10 meters per second. But when you scan at 10 meter per second, the material also has to respond. It should be able to absorb that kind of heat. So in plastic, you are able to probably go up to 4 meter per second or so, but in metal, it doesn't absorb that fast because you need to transfer a lot of energy to melt it. Okay, the latent heat is high. Therefore, typically in metal additive manufacturing using SLS process and all, they limit to 2 meter per second. Otherwise, motion system is capable of going at 10 meter per second. Now, when we talk about the electron beam, it can go at 10,000 meter per second. So compared to laser, electron beam can scan 1,000 times faster. Now, you know, even things like SEM, scanning electron microscope. In SEM also similar scanning happens. There they have reached even 1 lakh meter per second. So that's a kind of scanning speed possible. And RCAM's 3D printer of electron beam type, it's able to scan at 10,000 meter per second. So that gives some idea what kind of speed difference. Between milling and laser, you have about 120 times difference. Between laser and electron beam, you have 1,000 times the speed improvement. Okay, so that makes it far more attractive for us. Now, how does it translate into what is the advantage of higher scanning speed? Is it going to produce 1,000 times faster than laser-based additive manufacturing? No. If that is the expectation, please change your mind. It is not going to result in a higher production rate. Instead, it has some other very interesting advantages. Now, when you try to scan the same layer, instead of 2 meter per second, if you scan at 10,000 meter per second, then you spend time which is probably 5,000 times less. So, in other words, it approaches flash instead of calling it as a scan, it approaches the effect of a flash. So it is as good as a flash happening on the surface. So when you start scanning from one end to the other, you heat the material from one end to the other. So there is a substantial inhomogeneity of the heat distribution, thermal temperature distribution. So temperature distribution inhomogeneity leads to the quality distribution in terms of warpages. Okay, so and residual stresses. So residual stresses and warpages are like twin brothers. Okay, so one will convert itself into the other. So first you introduce residual stresses, and then residual stresses relieve themselves in the form of warpages. If the warpage is extreme or if the material is brittle, it will enter into the cracking zone. Okay, so rather than going gradually and then addressing the layer, if you run at extremely high speed, then it is equivalent to a flash. Of course, it will not transfer enough heat. Okay, but then repeat it several times. You repeat the scan, same scan several times. So every time, let's say you increase the temperature by 0.2 or 0.3 degrees centigrade, when you repeat several times, you are able to achieve the required rise in temperature. At the same time, very uniform stressing of the part. That is why you find that because of the high speed, the component you produce in additive manufacturing suffers very little residual stresses. So this is the most important advantage of going for higher scanning speed. It does not result in much higher productivity. Instead, it results in structure which is free from residual stress. That is one great advantage of electron beam. I will not give too much of weight to the high energy efficiency, because when you want to buy a Benz car, you don't buy it for its fuel efficiency. You buy it for its comfort, for its safety. So same here in additive manufacturing, energy efficiency is the last thing you should really bother about. You are more bothered about the quality of the part, the productivity of the part. Now, the second important advantage of additive manufacturing is the vacuum environment. When you build the part under vacuum, the component is completely, free from any kind of inclusions. Okay, even if you build it under argon, the porosities will be filled with argon. Whereas when you build under vacuum, even if you have porosity, the pores are wide. So the integrity of the part you produce is extremely high when you build it in vacuum. Initially, people were reluctant because vacuum costed money, but today vacuum pumps have become affordable. And people said, once you start the machine, you have to wait till vacuum builds up, and then when you stop the machine, you have to wait till the vacuum is released. All that is today applicable even for FDM. In FDM, the moment you close the door, you cannot switch on the machine. You have to wait for it to reach a certain temperature. Otherwise, the build will not be integral. So in any 3D printer today, you need to wait for a while till the required ambient conditions are achieved. Similarly, you cannot just after the build is over, open the door and then take out the part. You need to wait for it to settle down. So the soaking is anyway involved in other additive manufacturing processes. So I will not give any weightage to it anymore for EBAM system. So the vacuum is a great advantage for this. The third advantage is versatility in terms of material. When you deal with laser, it is pathetic when it comes to highly conductive material, both conductivity in terms of heat, conductivity in terms of electricity. Copper, aluminum, gold, silver, laser will find it very difficult. Whereas electron beam will be more friendly towards these materials. So in my anticipation, I'm actually foreseeing that in future, laser will take backseat for metals and the entire metal domain will be dominated by electron beam. Electron beam will not find applications as of now in the current technology for non-metals because it requires conduction. But you don't know, in future, they may come up with electron beam, which can also penetrate non-conducting materials. Because in the beginning, people used to keep the table as 0 and the cathode was kept at minus 60 kV or minus 80 or even minus 120 kV. But today there is an anode in the gun itself. Okay, so the beam generation happens within the gun, the complete beam generation, focusing, deflection. So you get a clean beam coming out and hitting the target. So the potential difference between the anode in the gun and the table is not substantial. Okay. The only problem is all the electrons that fall on the bed have to go back so that the conductivity loop is maintained. So in that sense, the object you build has to be conductive, but people may come up with some innovative ideas by which they will be able to overcome this problem also. So I spent little extra time on explaining the significant advantage of electron beam because I strongly feel, maybe you can consider me a fanatic towards electron beam. I strongly feel that this is going to be the future for metal additive manufacturing, and that's also reflected by the fact that we were able to get good funding, although we are not experts in this area. Electron beam, we are reading about it only for the last 4 years, and we are still trying to understand what it is. We bet on the capability of BRC for the basic knowledge. We still don't know how we are going to deflect the coil. Okay, I'm going to discuss about it in the subsequent part of the lecture. So I have, I think, another half an hour left. I'm still in preamble. These are required. So I already told about 2 projects, 5 crore on this, about, it's not 7.5 anymore, it's about 6 crore. So about 11 crore together. Okay, so now we have already discussed a lot about the tools we are talking about. Milling or even forming tools, there is a physical contact between the workpiece and the tool. And these movements are typically a single stroke or few movements which are substantially longer. In a milling, the cutter is large. Therefore, with about 5-6 passes or 20 passes, you will be able to cover the complete layer. Whereas in the beam-based system, beam is very small. Therefore, you need to have several scans to address the complete layer. So the tools that we use can be divided into contact type tools, which could be end mill, forming tools and all that, or non-contact type tools, where I refer to high energy density beams, laser and electron beam. Now, some of the applications and their characteristics. All these laser and electron beam can be used for joining, cutting and engraving. That is one application, one group of applications, or additive manufacturing. So on the left side here, I've listed the various characteristics of that. Accuracy is almost same, whether it is joining, cutting, engraving or AM, but the other things differ. Number of passes in the first group of process, it's just a single stroke or few passes, whereas as I explained in electron beam, you may do very rapid passes, but the same pass may be repeated several times. So the passes are more. Okay. And looking at the length of the travel is very less here, very short. Whereas here, the length could run into several kilometers because each layer has a contour and then a lot of rasters to fill the inside and multiple passes of these two. So the length of movement is extremely long. Now, that length of movement has a very interesting characteristic. In the pick and place device or in this type of processes, it's a single length. So you have sufficient time to ramp on, go steady, and then ramp off. Whereas here, the movements could be very short. Look at this particular picture. Okay, let's say that this is the layer we are going to produce. You may go in several parallel vectors, or you may fill it with raster. Okay, so you see that it's not a single long motion, but several small vectors of motions. And now, when you look at any motion system, it has to start from some velocity, go to a higher velocity, go at a steady velocity, then again ramp down to reach a lower velocity or zero velocity. Okay, that is how this will be happening. So you when you start here, you need some distance through which ramping happens. Then you move steadily for some distance. Then you ramp down for the remaining distance. And then you again move in the other direction. Repeat the same. So every vector has these three zones: ramp on, steady, and ramp off. Okay, everyone knows this. Okay. But the unfortunate part in additive manufacturing is you never reach, or you rarely reach, the steady state, because the distances are so short that by the you can only afford maximum half the distance for ramp on, and by the time you have not reached the maximum, and then you have to start decelerating. So you never complete the trapezoidal ramp curve. Okay, you always get into a short triangle based ramp on ramp off motion. You never reach the steady state. So what does it mean? Velocity has no meaning. It is the acceleration which has the meaning. The slope of this curve, which is the acceleration, dv by dt. So the acceleration of the system is far more important than the maximum velocity possible in the system. In the case of a pick and place, like a conveyor, you want to pick a part from one place, transfer it to something like 2 meters, then you can even afford 100 millimeters for ramping on. You can reach 20 meters per minute or 20 meters per second, and then go to the other end and drop it. But such a freedom is not available in HED based systems or additive manufacturing systems, because each motion is very, very narrow in nature. This is something you have to appreciate. So length of travel, it is very long and it is broken down into small, small vectors. Therefore, you don't have sufficient time to ramp on to reach the maximum possible velocity. Therefore, the maximum velocity is not really of any significance if you don't have a very high acceleration. In a typical milling based environment, you hardly have about 5G, 0.5 meter per 50 meter per second square or 5 meter per second square. That is adequate. Whereas in the case of 3D printing, this is a very, very pathetic value. Now, in any of the beams, in the case of milling cutter, the cutter is flat at the bottom. Its performance is same along the radial direction. Of course, at a micro level, the pi dn by 60 or the surface velocity is different. Otherwise, in terms of material removal rate, it removes the same material. But when you look at a beam by nature is having a Gaussian profile. In other words, it is very intense at the center and its energy density decreases along the radial direction. What is desirable is this type of nature. So this is known as a Gaussian curve or Gaussian distribution. And this is the flat hat. It's a slang, flat hat distribution or flat distribution. This is what we need. It's not like a pen with which you are writing a letter. It is a paintbrush with which you are filling a region like a painter. So in 3D printing, you need a brush-like beam and not a sharp beam. Now, how do we achieve it? We are going to see it a little later. Okay, so these are some of the interesting differences between the requirements of these beams for the traditional manufacturing applications and additive manufacturing applications. Okay, so all our discussions are based on these preambles. Now we'll quickly go back. This is the actual starting of the topic. We'll discuss in the next few slides the various positioning systems in use. So you know that if you talk about various axes, each axis has a motor and drive system, and then there could be multiple motions. There could be any number of axes. Each axis consists of a slide and a motor system, and there could be any number of axes like that, but there can be only a maximum of 6 degrees of freedom. Each axis consists of a slide like this. So this is a belt-driven system. So this is the slide. Okay, you have 2 wheels on which timer belt is there. At one end of the timer belt, the slide is connected. So when you connect a motor here, when the motor is rotated, the slide will move. Now you can use this set to produce multiple axes. You can assemble like this to get your X, Y, and all that. So it could be belt driven or it could be lead screw driven. So you can have a lead screw at the center, connect a motor here. So when you rotate the lead screw, the slide will move back and forth. Okay, so these are based on rotary motors. Okay, the motor you connect here or here is going to be the traditional rotary motor. There are also linear motors available. So here we are talking about linear motor. So this is a similar slide. You have a lot of magnets buried here. So by appropriately, this will have a coil. By appropriately injecting a multi-phase DC pulsed voltage, not DC really, pulsed voltage, you will be able to create the system to move in the desired direction, the desired velocity. So you can visualize this as a rotary motor with infinite diameter. Okay, so linear motor based systems are also available. They are in existence for the last 30 years. Unfortunately, they are not able to compete with this system in terms of price. Otherwise, they are very, very reliable. So where you will be able to get an acceleration of something like 0.5 to 1 g, here you are able to get even 50 g is possible. Okay, economically about 20 g is possible, but even 50 g to 100 g is possible. Basically, these are defined in terms of thrust they can create. Okay, so if you control your moving mass, then you can control the acceleration. Thrust divided by moving mass is the acceleration. So by controlling the moving mass, by going for better design, better material, you will be able to increase the acceleration. Many times the acceleration is not dictated by the motor's capacity. In this particular system, you'll be surprised that it is dictated by the LM guide. This is known as LM guide. When I read about linear motors about 20 years ago, I used to think that the linear motor themselves will be a magnetic bearing where the moving mass is balanced nicely without any contact with these magnets. But then subsequently people found that that is not very feasible, because when there is no power, it has to rest somewhere. So they have added LM guides on it. So today when you buy a linear motor, you don't get a pure linear motor. You get a linear motor with LM guides. The LM guides ensure that this doesn't contact anywhere here. Therefore, the actual acceleration velocity is not limited by the motor system. It is limited by the LM guide. Sometimes it is limited by the cable guide. You need to connect a cable to it. So the cable has to be, on a guided system. That the response of that system becomes the bottleneck. Otherwise, linear motor based systems are also available for creating this type of linear motions. Okay, so using these linear motions, you will be able to create a milling machine, or you will be able to create this type of arrangement, which in the context of laser, it is nothing but an XY degree of freedom. In the context of laser, we call it as flying optics. Okay, so this is the laser. There is a 45-degree mirror, fixed mirror, which deflects the beam in this direction. There's another 45-degree mirror which will deflect it in this direction. Okay, so when this moves in this direction, because this beam or this mirror also moves, you deflect it in this direction. Okay, so that is like changing the Y position. Now there is one more mirror here which deflects it downward. So a combination of two moving mirrors ensures, two translating mirrors ensures positioning the beam at any desired location. Now you need two mirrors because you are addressing X and Y, 2 degrees of freedom. Now instead of using two mirrors, you can also use two translating mirrors. You can also use two oscillating mirrors. So you see that there is one oscillating mirror here, another oscillating mirror here orthogonally. Laser comes here, this is a collimating system, and then it hits this. By appropriately controlling the angles of these two, you can position the beam anywhere you want. So this is the typical galvanometer based motion system. Here, since linear motions are involved, your speeds are limited, accelerations are limited, whereas here the speed can be economically up to 10 meter per second. Acceleration can be anywhere from 5,000 meter per second square to 5,000 G to 7,000 G. It can be 50,000 meter per second square. Okay, so these are popular for laser based system. So you can remember that flying optics or the traditional XY motion, linear motion, is one method of doing it, which is very slow. The other method is based on galvanometer. This particular system is typically for electron beam. So you have the electron gun here, then you have the collimating happening here, then you have a set of coils, one pair of coil for X and Y directions. So the coil will deflect the beam. So now see here, because of the linear axis, moving mass is high, so acceleration velocity are low. Here it's a very tiny mirror, few grams. So moving mass is very low, so acceleration velocity are very high. Here there is absolutely no moving mass. When there is no moving mass, it can reach the velocity of light. That is why today we are able to move the beam at extremely high velocities like 10,000 meter per second or even 1 lakh meter per second in the case of the SEMs. Okay, so these are the various systems. So these are the basic building blocks: rotary motor based or linear motor based. These are useful for traditional manufacturing machines or laser control. Okay, so this is very specific galvanometer, specific for laser deflection, and this coil based deflection is specific for electron beam. So these are the various motion systems possible. So we have already discussed a lot of details comparing both of these. So okay, so these are all some basic concepts. I already explained the details of this picture earlier. And this figure, again, we have seen earlier that in additive manufacturing, lot of tiny motions running into kilometers are involved. Therefore, acceleration is more important than the velocity, because the slope of this curve becomes the acceleration. So it should be as sharp as possible. So when the acceleration is low, we never reach the maximum velocity. So for us, the acceleration is more important. Okay, we'll move forward. We'll quickly look at some of the guidelines, generic for both beams, generic for high energy density beams. So as I have been harping already, acceleration, acceleration, acceleration. I am a fanatic of acceleration in motion systems today, not so much on velocity, because our motions are so tiny and so long. Okay, so first guideline, avoid too many turns. So if you are doing a path planning, don't go for contour parallel area filling. So this is your layer. So to fill the layer, you have several options. You can do by contour parallel. You can move in raster about X, raster about Y, raster about 45 degrees or any angle. And there are many other methods possible. You can make use of, there's something called Hilbert curve. You know, a lot of curves are available, repeating curves. These curves also can fill it. You can even use traveling salesman's problems to address the various points. There are different methods available. So our conclusion is we will never use any of those complicated motions, because the number of turns are more, the lengths of the motions are much less, so you never reach the maximum velocity. So our advice is to go for only raster. Okay, now I'll come to discussion related to the raster, whether it is 0 or 90 or any other angle. Okay, there is another guideline coming, I think fourth guideline. Otherwise, you remember that compared to this type of twisting thing, you need a long motions possible. This is one important guideline. Second guideline is when this is the kind of geometry, your typical area filling will start from here and will go in a zigzag manner like this. Okay, when you go like this, then what will happen? This will be hotter, and then the heat will be slowly going like this. So you are putting the heat in an inhomogeneous way. So what we propose is, even if you have a long motion, you divide the motion into several segments. Okay, maybe based on the length or based on the number of passes. You use your own strategy. Initially, we used the length like 250 mm, and then this is 250 mm, this is 250 mm. So we divided into several segments and then randomly choose these segments. For example, I deposit this first, then deposit this, then deposit this, and you keep going back and forth in a random way. By doing it, you are able to distribute the heat in a very uniform way. So by doing this, we are very, very successful in sand 3D printing. Otherwise, we face a lot of cracks coming and warpages coming. Okay, so segmenting the tool path and randomly jumping from one segment to the other helps in uniform distribution of the heat. So initially we used the length as the criteria. Then we found that, as in this example, for the given length, number of passes are more here, number of passes are less here. So then subsequently we decided that we will use number of passes as the criteria, not the length. Okay, so this is the second guideline. First guideline, avoid too many turns, because every turn means one deceleration and one acceleration. So we would like to avoid it. Avoid the number of, segmented and then deposit the segments at random to uniformly distribute the heat. Third interesting guideline is no need to switch off the beam when you jump from one segment to the other. So by doing it, we are able to use a very cheap laser, hardly 45,000 to 60,000 rupees, a 130 watt laser. We are able to buy for about 60,000 rupees. So that makes it a very economical proposition. And it doesn't really affect. That is our experience. The fourth very interesting guideline, this, I did this work during the Corona break. So I was looking at the various path. So my recommendation to the students is always go for 0 and 90. Alternate layers, change the direction to 0 and 90 so that they nicely crisscross each other. That was the recommendation. Then subsequently, what is the advantage of doing only one axis at a time? When you do this axis, only X will move. So you can go it at G00. Similarly, when you do this, you can go at G00. You can go so when you use only one axis at a time, there is no difference between G00 and G01. Okay, no interpolation is taking place. So that's what the bottom line. I want to avoid interpolation, because interpolation makes the system very slow. Because what is interpolation? If this is a line, the line has to be divided into small segments, because how is it at a micro domain happening, the motion? Everything is based on a digital system. For each pulse, you move either in X or Y, or you give pulse to both axes so that a 45-degree motion will take place. So this line has to be approximated into very tiny horizontal, vertical, and 45-degree motion. That is how the motion planning takes place at a micro domain. Interpolator does it. Now think of the number of calculations it will be doing for doing it. So any interpolator slows down the system drastically. So what we decided, that we will not go for interpolation. Go only at 0 or 90 degrees. So no interpolation. You can go at G00. Then subsequently, I thought, why to go at 0 and 90 degrees? Why not go at 45 and 135? Okay. So 45 and 135. At 45 also you don't do any interpolation, assuming that the characteristics of the X and Y motors are same. Okay. At 45 also you don't do any interpolation. Run at G00, there is no difference in the path. But then I realized that even at 45 degrees, at between each passes, you have two turns. Okay. We wanted to see whether we can even reduce that. Then we said, let us go for sawtooth. Okay. Sawtooth. It's the same. It's the same. But drop this point, drop alternate turn points. So from here, we can go directly to this. Again, skip this point. From here, we can go directly to this. So by doing it, by skipping the alternate points, we are able to move like this. But the command you will give will be G00. I hope you all understand what is G0 and G01. G00 is a rapid motion where the system doesn't bother about the path. It only bothers about the endpoint. In G001, it will try to divide it into horizontal, vertical, and 45 degrees line and then follow it. Okay. So we just de-link the two motors. They run at maximum possible speed. So this is sawtooth. You'll find that I'm also becoming a little bit of fanatic on sawtooth form in various domains. I'm going to talk about one more sawtooth. Okay. Now if you look at this sawtooth, it is not 45 degrees. It is slightly more or slightly less than 45 degrees. But when you move this in 45 degree, in G00, obviously it will make a strong 45 degrees line and then a short vertical line. So it will be actually a 45-degree and a vector line. So I don't know how much you will be able to follow unless you have done programming. You may not be able to follow it so much. So this is our original zigzag path at 45 degrees. Okay. Now, by dropping one point, this is the zigzag path. For the sake of clarity, I have copied the red line here. So instead of green path, you are going to get this path. But when the machine actually interprets, it is not going to follow this. It is going to follow something like this. It will go at 45, instead of going like this, it will go at 45 degrees line in G00, and the leftover motion in Y will be addressed like this. Okay, but it doesn't matter because your step over is hardly 0.2 or 0.3 millimeter, so it doesn't matter in the case of energy beam systems. Okay, so by doing this sawtooth based system, we were able to increase the possible speed by something like 5 times or 6 times depending on the contour nature. So it's a very, very important contribution. We have submitted a patent on this algorithm. So that is about the generic guidelines, 4 guidelines I gave. And then some guidelines specific to electron beam. We talked about 10, I'm running another 6 minutes left. We talked about the electron beam capable of 10,000 meter per second. Now, when you have a CNC program, okay, to read one NC block from the CNC program and then parse it, put in the various registers, it takes about 30 milliseconds. A good CNC controller may take probably 20 or 10 milliseconds. And 10 milliseconds, you can calculate how much of length of movement possible. Okay, 10 millisecond into 10 power minus 6 divided by 10,000 meter per second. So this runs into few meters. Okay, so 10 millisecond means a lot. In that time it goes. You know, we say, you know, there is a story. I don't have time to tell stories. I love to tell. I'll skip it. There is a related story from Nalan. Okay, you try to read it and link it. So this is what I'm talking about. So we can never do digital computation. You have to manage the beam in an analog way. No longer digital computation can meet, because the entire system linked with that have to meet the speed. It is not enough to have only the car running at 100 kilometer per hour. The road also should support it. Okay, if the road has a bottleneck, then nothing can be done. Okay, so beam only is capable of moving at that. So all the motion system has to cooperate with that. So how do we do that? No longer digital computation. We will go directly for analog computation. So what we have done is, I'll come back to that. We have developed a quadtree based algorithm. So this is the contour we are talking about. So I have a quadtree program which can approximate the geometry into squares of different dimensions, different sizes. Now each square I can address separately and randomly. Okay, so it's something like this. So this is a raster graphics happening. This is nothing but electron beam. What happens on a CRT is same thing happening in electron beam system. So we will move the X and Y coil using sawtooth oscillators. That's where I said I'm a fanatic of sawtooth. So sawtooth based oscillations are possible. So this is a sawtooth oscillation. For X and Y, you give sawtooth waveforms of different frequencies to get this particular format. So each square can be scanned by the electron beam by giving different bias voltages and amplitude for the X and Y coils. By doing it, you are able to get the scanning of different things. So only jumping from one to the other is a digital jumping. Rest is all analog. So this is how we have developed our system. So it is going to be a quadtree based approximation of the geometry. So whole system will happen as approximated square. Finally, we do the contouring using the digital system. So now specific to laser, laser is very sharp, so one can make use of oscillation of the laser. This is true in even in MIG welding. Oscillation makes it little flat head, but then oscillation again slows down. Therefore, we wanted to see whether when the oscillation happens, so this is how oscillation happens. We wanted to see whether the hill point and valley points of the oscillations can be matched. It is possible to match, okay, using the path planning algorithm. We matched it, but then we realized that, matching it this way doesn't help because each suffers the ramp, okay? It ramps in some part, steady, again ramp down. So P then recalculated. So the wave is not really this, the wave is this, okay? So we could not use this, but we had to use this. So if this is the kind of geometry we are talking about, if we assume this method, then we get this kind of thing where the benefits are lost. So we slightly prepone and postpone the motions. By doing it, we were able to get these waves match with one another, and hence we were able to get that. Okay, now I'm coming to the conclusions. So more or less in time. So paths are too long and in thousands of short segments in additive manufacturing. So beam positioning system is the bottleneck for additive manufacturing because the beams are able to move faster, but the motion system becomes the problem. So among the various motion parameters, acceleration is the most important motion parameter, not so much about velocity. So based on these discussions, we gave several guidelines for additive manufacturing. One set of guidelines, I remember 4 guidelines for generic for both beams, high energy density beams, and a few guidelines specific to electron beam and a guideline specific to laser. As we saw during the discussions, when it comes to electron beam, its speed is far higher than anything else. Therefore, the digital computation cannot match that. So we explored ways of analog computation. This is not new. Please remember, the TV of the past has been doing it, okay? But they are able to switch on the beam instantly at the required point. So we are trying to understand how it can be done, but analog is not new. So the final guideline is, whenever it comes to electron beam, always go for deflection coil. You can also go for the traditional axis, but then you don't get the benefit of electron beam. So if you want to really gain from the high speed of electron beam, you have to go for deflection and analog computation. When you want to gain from the high speed of the laser, you have to go for galvanometer. It cannot be a flying optics. Flying optics with rotary motor will not work. So we are considering flying optics with linear motors. See, the problem with galvanometer is today galvanometers are not available beyond something like 1 kilowatt of power handling because it becomes very hot. The mirror requires water cooling. The moment you have water cooling on the mirror, then the inertia increases. Therefore, the galvanometer cannot handle more than 1 kilowatt of power, whereas we are currently considering a 4 kilowatt based system for our sand based 3D printer. SLS process from EOS uses only 100 watt power, whereas we are considering using 4,000 watt power. So a galvanometer will not work, and we don't want to be stuck by the rotary motor. So we are developing a machine which will make use of the linear motor. So I try to dump whatever we have been doing over the last several years. So this is just to give an idea what kind of work going on in IIT Bombay. Please feel free to contact me. I think I have my contact details here. I don't guarantee that I'll reply every mail, and I'm extremely bad in mobile phone. Most of the time it doesn't ring, but still if you are a determined person, I'm sure you will be able to catch me. It's not out of ego, but a professor is not that important in terms of time, and I don't want my time to be bound by mobile phones. I don't even, my mobile phone is about 15 years old, so I don't bother to maintain a good communication. But certainly, if you are serious, you will catch me. So with this, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much for the patient listening. I'm missing the eye contact, so we can't help it. This because of Corona and this online delivery. As the communication tools improve, as the bandwidth improves, we can have all people's video online so that we can interact also. Thank you very much. I close here. I'll be pleased to answer any questions if there is time.
Thank you, sir. It was a wonderful presentation, and we can see the efforts which has gone into the work, and the passionate explaining explains everything. Participants, I would request you to post your queries either on the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask questions. Sir is available now. Like he said, you might not catch him later.
Are there? I can see the chat box also. I'll stop sharing so that I can. I don't see any comments. Only thanks are there. Well, okay, he says when we go for sawtooth flow path, is there more deposition in the soil since it takes more time than rest of the path? What you say is right. If you are talking about yes, at every turn there will be a blob of material happening because the wire keeps coming, whereas the velocity is less. So at turns, the thickness deposited will be high. You are right. Yeah, you are very smart to catch that point. That is why in our system, we do face milling every time. So we don't really care variation of the thickness, because in our hybrid layered manufacturing system, we face mill after every layer. Yeah, very good. Thank you very much. A good question.
Participants, do we have any other queries? You can unmute and ask directly.
I value the I value the networking we get from this conference. So that is valuable to me too. Okay, so if some of you have resources, we would like to collaborate. Some of you may be from several academic institutions. You may have similar matching interests. So let us take it forward. Same amongst you also.
Yes, so that is much more important in these
Yes.
seminars.
Yeah. During a lecture, we don't understand everything. It gives only a glimpse of it. We don't understand everything.
It was power packed, sir. I think we have to go through the recording once again to get certain points here. But the acceleration velocity difference, the things you told about galvanometer and the flying object, and finally the electron beam, the speed with which it was all understandable, sir. It was quite understandable.
Okay.
I enjoyed the session, sir.
Okay.
And learned a lot too.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah. So PhD Tech is like my second institute. Only last Thursday we had a Viva. I think Wednesday.
Okay, sir.
With automotive.
Yeah, Dr. Prabharan was telling me like you had visited our department and
many times.
Many times, but I haven't met you yet. Like probably next
time. It's bad luck because of Corona. I miss Coimbatore.
Okay.
I'll come next time.
Please do, sir.
After March 18th, I traveled only recently to TN. Yesterday only I returned.
Okay.
Yeah. Complete travel has stopped. It is both good and bad. It saved a lot of money for various activities. We learned how to work without physical visits.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I think the same things could be achieved without the visits, except that we miss the adventure of traveling, probably.
Yes, that's true. You love to travel, see places. Otherwise, TV is enough.
Yeah, right, sir.
Uh,
So I think that is it. The participants have not come forward to ask any further questions. So
yeah.
thank
So
you
they can
so much.
note down the contact details, and
Yes,
sometimes some replies are possible.
yes, sir.
As I said, now if somebody is desperate to catch me, my poor response will be compensated by their desperation.
I
They will
think the
catch me.
participants are smart enough, they can get hold of one of your students, through them contact you.
Yeah, that is also possible.
Possible. That is the
Yeah, yeah,
easiest way possible, sir.
yeah, that is true. Now we are bad in maintaining a good web page where all these queries, somebody can post, some student can reply.
Yes.
I'm not able to build my web page at all properly. We keep moving from one to the other. A lot of administration work. Right now we have about 30 crores of project, and administrative work is killing.
Paperwork.
Yeah, a lot of paperwork. Every purchase order, funding agency gives money in different heads. You have to manage among the heads. You cannot exceed one head. Big headache.
Too many things to look into.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I think we don't have
We
further
can
queries.
wind up.
Probably they'll get in touch with you through your students. Thank
Yeah.
you, sir.
No
Nice
problem.
meeting you through
No,
this
let them
medium.
write to me. I'll forward. I can also reply. As I said, no, it depends on how serious. See, passion is different from interest.
That's true.
Okay. If somebody has only interest, they may not be able to catch me. If somebody is desperate and passionate, they will catch me.
We had another resource person day before yesterday, I suppose. His passion was
What's
3D printing.
what's his
And
name?
I don't remember him exactly
Topic?
the name. It was on 3D printing, sir. And he
Okay.
said he was very, very passionate about 3D printing, that he
Hmm.
had built so many small projects and explored a lot.
Okay.
So he told
Industry or
passion,
academia? Academia or industry?
academia, sir.
Okay.
So
PhD Tech is the first institute to build SLA printer, That was Dr. Radhakrishnan,
Radhakrishnan, yeah, he was
20
the
years, 25 years ago.
yes, sir. He was the chief guest of honor for the
Yeah.
inauguration, and it was
He's
nice.
like a mentor. He's like a mentor for me, you
He's
know.
our mentor too, sir.
Yeah. He's like Pidama in Mahabharata, for PhD Tech.
Yes, sir. He's still there. We are getting his advices even now, and
Yeah,
in person too.
yeah. I
Okay.
know him extremely well. He
Okay.
was a guide to my own younger brother. He was in VIT for some time when Professor Radhakrishnan was there.
Oh,
Good,
so,
very good. So it's a pleasure. So be in touch. Share your details also.
sure, sir.
I'll store Dr. Prabhakaran's details also.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, wonderful. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank
So
you,
good
sir.
luck to all participants. Bye bye. I can
Thank you for
close
the
now.
presentation, sir. Again, yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank
We'll
you.
meet again, sir. Probably in person.
Sure. Bye.
Good day, sir.